Professor Roz Picard is the founder and director of the Effective Computing Research Group at the MIT Media Lab. She's the co-director of the Media Lab's Advanced Wellbeing Initiative and the faculty chair of MIT's Mind, Hand, and Heart Initiative. She co-founded Empatica, creating wearable sensors and analytics to improve health, and Affectiva, delivering technology to help measure and communicate emotion. Welcome, Roz, and thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I don't know what's scarier, George's information about what's becoming possible, or Joey saying affective computing is now a discipline for my work. Do I have to stop doing it now? All right, full disclosure, I'm a shareholder in Empatica and in Affectiva. Today I'm going to tell you some stories, though, that started with trying to measure emotion. In the beginning, we were building technologies that could enable computers to have the skills of emotional intelligence, to see if you're looking at the computer and you're really frustrated or confused or bored or annoyed or occasionally amused or happy. And we built face reading technology that has now been commercialized by Affectiva and is out there. You can download for free on your phone now under ApplySci, and it's gotten highly accurate with lots of data. We built it inspired by the needs of people on the autism spectrum who we had read and had talked to them about their challenges reading other people's emotions. One day, one of them came to me and said, "Roz, you've got it all wrong. My biggest problem is not reading other people's emotions. It's you're not reading my emotions." And I, at first, felt pretty humbled. I work on this. Am I really that bad? And she said, "It's not just you, it's everybody. Everybody's not reading my emotions very well." And I said, "Well, what are we missing?" And she said, "You're missing my stress. I'm having enormous stress. Many of us are having enormous stress." And while we see this picture of this little boy looking outwardly very stressed, for many people, what was going on inwardly was a much bigger storm than what was being viewed outwardly. So we set out to find ways to measure this that could be not just done in the lab, like you see here with skin conductance on the hand, old galvanic skin response technology that has been significantly improved on. And the real scientists who work with us now study this greater phenomenon of electrodermal activity. We did many innovations here in wearables over the last decade plus, trying to get out of the lab to get high quality data regardless of movement, make it wireless, wearable, explore different parts of the body. And today, I'm wearing two sensors that have been greatly improved on from our MIT work and commercialized by Empatica. I'll say a little bit more about the science of what these can collect. These are the Embrace and the E4. Embrace for consumer use and E4 developed for scientists to get data. When we first got continuous electrodermal activity data, here shown as the skin conductance for 7 days, top to bottom, 24 hours from left to right. Here, the data from the wrist of an MIT student. We can see in the upper left here that it was going up, as one would expect when a student is engaged in lab activity or engaged in exams or studying. MIT problem sets and homeworks are notoriously hard, and cognitive load, mental effort, has been known to make this signal go up significantly. To our embarrassment, the low point every day is classroom activity here. In general, when you are sitting in the audience listening, you are less physiologically aroused than when you are up here presenting or when you are asking questions. If we were to broadcast your skin conductance, it would be like a decaying exponential during PowerPoint presentations. But it will go up if we can make you laugh or when you ask us questions. Surprisingly, the biggest peak of each day is during sleep, more specifically during non-REM sleep, and usually the latter part of stage 2 and into stage 3. And when you zoom in on these giant peaks, there are high-frequency patterns that interestingly match some of the statistics being recorded from single neuron recordings these days, in the hippocampus, actually. Now, Here's a picture of a sweatband that had some of our homebrew electronics in it in the early days of MIT. And one day, one of the undergrads in my lab came to me, and he said, it was the end of the semester, and he said to me, Professor Picard, could I please borrow one of your sensors? My little brother has autism, he can't talk, and I want to see what's stressing him out. So we could wirelessly transmit the boy's skin conductance going up and down and see what part of his day was chill and what was really aggravating. So I said, don't just take one, take two, because they broke a lot back then. Do you need a soldering iron? I said to him. He said, no, I have a soldering iron. Great, MIT students, well prepared. He goes home with the two bands, and I'm back at MIT looking at the little boy's data on my computer, and I see first day, first of all, he's put the bands on at the same time, redundant. I didn't think that was going to be that useful, but could cancel noise. The two wrist signals were really low. Next day, really low, kind of boring. Next day, really low, and I'm thinking, man, here's a kid with severe autism, and his life is more chill than mine. Go to the next day, and one of the wrist sensors went so high that I thought it must have broken. We have measured stress here at MIT in just about every way imaginable. Qualifying exams, Boston driver stress, construction traffic, all of these things that really make autonomic activity peak. And I had never seen data go this high. Even more peculiar, it was high on one wrist and not the other. So I was trying to figure out how both sides were broken at the same time. Moreover, there was data right before and after this event, as I zoomed in, that looked not only perfectly normal, but showed classic slow wave sleep signature patterns right after this bizarre event. I'm an electrical engineer by training. I did a lot of work to debug this, and I could not explain it. So finally, unwilling to give up, I called the student at home on vacation. Hi, how's your little brother? How's your Christmas? Do you have any idea what happened to him? And I gave the exact date and time of this thing I couldn't explain. He says, I'll check the diary. Diary? MIT student keeps a diary, quick like prayer of like, what are the odds of this? I have teenage boys. There's no way they would have written this down. He comes back. He has exactly the date and time written down. And he says, that was right before he had a grand mal seizure. Now, I didn't know much about seizures. I've since learned quite a bit. But I got on the phone with another student's dad, Dr. Joe Madsen, who's chief of neurosurgery at Children's Hospital Boston. Hi, Dr. Madsen. My name's Roz Picard. Is it possible that somebody could have a huge sympathetic nervous system surge? This is the part of the autonomic nervous system that gives rise to the skin conductance. Have this sympathetic nervous system surge, in this case, 20 minutes before a seizure, which is what it looked like. He said, probably not. However, he says it's interesting. We've had patients whose hair stands on end on one arm 20 minutes before a seizure. And I said, on one arm, because I was baffled. How could you have stress on one side of your body and not the other? Well, he explained how, in fact, you could have this aberrant electrical activity in one part of your brain that could give rise to this response on one arm. He got very interested. We made a bunch more devices, got them safety certified, enrolled about 80 people, and part of this picture is missing here. My goodness, what happened to my slide? You're going to have to use your imagination here. What's missing is the actual skin conductance data that's usually on this slide, that where you see these three red vertical lines, there is a big peak in skin conductance, much bigger than even those biggest slow wave sleep peaks. It looks like redwood trees compared to little maple trees in Boston, California redwoods. And those three big peaks not only go up for the 2 to 3 minutes of the actual seizure, but it goes up for 20, 30 minutes after the seizure, too, in most cases. Not before, not the 20 minutes before that we hoped for. What we learned was that this big peak was not due to somebody having lots of convulsions and getting sweaty. We thought maybe it's just sweat response. It's just general sweat. Turns out it's not related to that at all. It can even happen during some kinds of seizures when there's no convulsions. using the skin conductance and the movement data together with machine learning. Originated at MIT, Ming-Zur Po did the first doctoral thesis showing we could build machine learning algorithms to automatically detect convulsive seizures. And then Empatica now has improved upon this significantly with a lot more data to get much more accurate seizure detection. Now, as we were trying to figure out what was causing this huge response that seemed unrelated to stress or sweating due to physical activity or thermal changes and everything else that we were measuring, because we're trying to pick up environmental data also to add more specificity, we learned that it's not just stroke that is a major killer among the neurological diseases, and Lou Gehrig's disease and multiple sclerosis and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and meningitis and encephalitis. But there's another one that I'm curious how many of you here had ever heard of, unless you've heard me speak before. How many of you have heard of SUDEP? I see about 5, 6, 7 hands. That's not much. More people have had their genome sequenced here than have heard of SUDEP, which is a problem because SUDEP, we now think in most cases might be preventable, and yet it's the #2 cause of years of potential life loss of all neurological disorders. It's taking a life every 7 to 9 minutes. And we have found that we didn't do this work, but others, lots of people have recorded that the one biomarker that has always been observed as present when there happened to be an EEG on, when somebody died of SUDEP, this sudden unexpected death while having epilepsy, is that you see on the left here, these are different electrode traces from the scalp. They're kind of going crazy during the seizure, and then they're going flat. Kind of looks like the brain shut down here. This is called post-ictal, after the seizure, generalized across all EEG channels, EEG suppression, PGES. And this PGES was observed in all these SUDEP cases. Well, it turns out that after most seizures, you don't have PGES, fortunately, but after after some of them, you have a whole lot of it. And we found that the size of the response we were getting on the wrist, which is shown here on the horizontal axis, was correlated with the duration of time that the brain waves appeared to be shutting down after the seizure. Now, this original study was in a population at Children's Hospital Boston, a population of children who were all candidates for brain surgery because they were all refractory to drug treatments. What is hard to see here is this is that picture I just showed you turned vertically. So the higher up here, the longer the brain waves are suppressed, and the bigger the skin conductance response. Since this work was published in Neurology, we have also gone on, and it's been replicated at another site also with adults, and this goes way up. And unfortunately, we just published in Neurology the first case study of a SUDEP also, where this data was recorded from the wristband by somebody who didn't know SUDEP was possible and did not get there in time. So this is something that really surprised us. Why on earth is something that looks like your brain is shut down producing an even bigger signal on the wrist? Well, we're still trying to figure out this mystery, but there's some old interesting work that had looked at why electrodermal activity was asymmetric in children with learning disabilities. And in that work, they went in and they directly stimulated different regions of the brain while measuring bilateral skin conductance in a bunch of people. And here, one of the compelling findings was across the patients that they stimulated. When they stimulated the right amygdala, they got a big right skin conductance response and very little on the left. So it's like stress on one side of your body. And when they stimulated the left, they got a big left skin conductance response and very little right. And separately, DeLuey and team have shown that if you go in and stimulate the amygdala of the person, so take Joey while he's maybe reading his email, and suppose he volunteers to let you do a craniotomy and go in and stimulate his amygdala, right or left. While he is doing his email, he will stop breathing. And he will show no outward signs of distress, except maybe from something he reads on the email, but not from stimulating the amygdala and making him stop breathing. For 40 seconds, you could have him stop breathing until one of us says, "Joey, what are you doing?" And he takes a breath and starts to talk again and starts to breathe again. So a fascinating thing is by simply superstimulating this region of the brain, you can turn off somebody's breathing. And by simply stimulating them from the environment outwardly, you can turn it back on. And this was observed in people happening not only with direct stimulation of left or right amygdala and in multiple patients, but also when a seizure happened to stimulate the patient's amygdala. Now, we know that the deaths that follow seizures are killing more people than house fires every year, than sudden infant death syndrome. The numbers are believed to be way underestimated here, but they're conservatively a death every 7 to 9 minutes. And we also know that people, when they are found with a SUDEP, are most likely to have been alone. That when somebody is there, perhaps because of the stimulation restoring of breathing, they're more likely to survive. Thus, don't be alone if you have convulsive seizures that are not suppressed by medicine. And if you know somebody who has them, tell them not to be alone. Tell them to make sure there's somebody who can come and get there quickly if they have such an event. So something like a fire alarm needs to exist as part of our bodies to alert people to come and help us at such a moment as that. So we quickly paused the autism stress work and started building sensors that could leave the lab, not just doing lots and lots and lots of hospital testing, but also go out, and this picture's missing too. I don't know what happened to my pictures. They were there, sorry. There's a beautiful picture of Embrace watch here, which you can come up and see afterwards. And this is a watch that's designed not only to tell time and to measure skin conductance and movement and temperature, but also to run real-time advanced machine learning so that you can send an alert quickly to your, through your cell phone to your caregivers, and also combine it with other environmental information and diary so that you can actually collect data and learn how to keep improving this machine learning in the future. Now, we have what makes my skin conductance go up is getting mails like this. This one was the very first one I received from a beta tester. She mails me that she had been in the shower. She saw her phone go off and say that her daughter needed help. She goes running out of the shower in the middle of everything, checks on her daughter, finds her daughter face down in bed, blue and not breathing, flips her over, and her daughter takes a breath, returns to breathing, and turns pink, and she's fine again. Immediately after this, she mails me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, is she okay? And she's like, yes, she's fine, she's fine. And then I'm going through the, oh dear, the technology's not perfect. What if the battery's dead? What if the Bluetooth doesn't connect? What if? And she says, don't worry about it. I know it's not perfect, but it's better than anything we have right now. And Natasha is here today because of getting there in time, she thinks. We've been hearing lots of other cases, too, that are really exciting. When our technology goes from what appeared originally to just be noise in the data that I was casually going through, and now it's out there and we're getting tweets and Facebook posts and things where people are telling us what a difference it's making and giving them another tomorrow. Now, I have pondered, like, why on earth would, when it looks like the brain is shutting down, we would get a big signal here? We now know that regions deep in the brain can activate this signal, and regions deep in the brain can also activate a kind of a shutdown signal. So the whole cortex looks like you're brain dead, when in fact, there's quite a bit of activity deep in the brain. And that activity, ironically, is activating the pseudomotor system, which is coming out in sweat patterns that are actually not generic all over the body, but appear more like Joey was showing in Eastern medicine, like in a garden, like it's going over to a particular flower patch or over to a particular tree. It's actually appearing to be much more interesting and patterned. And why would this be? And I, as an electrical engineer, was really bugged by this one day, and a member of my audience said to me, oh, Roz, it's easy. It's just Medicine 101. I'm an engineer, I never had Medicine 101. How many of you had Medicine 101? Actually, like a dozen of you. Okay, well, so sorry you already had this, but for the rest of us, in Medicine 101, they teach you that when we were all embryos, we had 3 kinds of tissue. And one of them formed the digestion, the lungs, all of those soft organs. Another one formed the muscles and the bones. And the third one, the ectoderm, knit together from the moment we were being formed, our brain, our spinal cord, all of our neural tissue, and the biggest organ of all, our skin. So back to that garden picture, it's no surprise that our outward organ is showing interesting patterns of connection to what's going on deep in the brain. So an EEG on the scalp was picking up nothing. but other patterns of the skin are picking up activation that's resulting from things deep in the brain. Since then, we've been looking more at this. Here's some more work showing different regions of the brain mapping to skin conductance patterns, especially regions involved in emotion and memory and attention. We also have been hypothesizing that some of the stress studies we've done might have more information in them than originally hypothesized. People used to think that, okay, if you make a bunch of people count backwards by sevens with somebody watching them, I'm going to press this obnoxious buzzer if you subtract wrong, and you're going to feel embarrassed, and you're going to feel anxious and stressed. And it's true, you do. And skin conductance goes up. And usually people just measure it on the left palm because that's usually the hand that's non-dominant. It's not involved in the experiment. And you get stuff like this blue data here. Here's 25 people's left palm skin conductance going up as an indication of how stressed they are when they're subtracting backwards fast and you're judging them. Now, what happens if we add the right data? Well, if we add the right data, we add a red bar graph for each person, and now we see that the story is very different. We see that some of these people who looked very calm by all of the traditional measures, the way that all the literature has been saying to do it for 100 years, that these people are actually showing a whopper of a right response. That's exactly what we would predict in a longer talk where I have time to go through and show you a bunch of brain imaging studies showing that we would expect in your typical right-hander more right activation of the regions that map to the right skin conductance. So there's 100 years of skin conductance literature that needs to be revisited. We wrote a paper on this, and that is published in Emotion Review. The editor called me up and said after it was accepted, you know, this is going to be kind of controversial because it sort of says there's a problem with how this has been done for 100 years. He says, are you open to criticism? And I said, absolutely, bring it on. The sooner I find out if I've done something wrong, the better. So he invited critics, and I was amazed. They were starting to come up with all kinds of other examples where this patterning exists in cardiology and in other areas as well, where the sympathetic patterning is not just a generic response. Now, back at the Media Lab, before Joey was around, previous director, a couple directors ago, I was asked when I was just working on computers measuring emotion that I should, could I please do something useful? He said. This was before all the epilepsy stuff. He said, Roz, what I really need is a mood ring that tells me my wife's mood before I go home. Now, at the Media Lab, we like to do things hard, and maybe I could make more money for our research building a stupid little temperature sensor that maps to color, but we like to solve real problems that are really hard that people don't know if we can solve. So we decided to learn a lot more about what's really important about mood. And by the way, now, so actually, here's a picture of Embrace and the Mate app, where we can get not just what we get from the surface of your skin, and of course, the other things consumer wearables get these days, steps, sleep, other physical activity indications. And here are little purple circles where this person has had convulsive seizures, either ones the device has detected or other kinds they may have entered manually. But we can also pick up lots of other environmental information from our smartphones. We've been measuring hundreds of parameters in studies with hundreds of New England college students trying to understand mood. So watch this short video that describes this latest work. Uh-oh. We're having a bad PowerPoint day. OK, PowerPoint just crashed. We'll launch it. Let me give you a couple of numbers. And actually, I'm excited to see Tom Insel here. He's going to talk more about this later. What we've learned that's so important about mood is it's actually, oh, there's that now. Now it's working. OK. Yeah, I want the world video here. Here, this. Audio, please.
Suicide will happen somewhere in the world every 20 seconds. By 2030, it will be the #1 disease burden. Disability and lives lost from depression will be greater than from cancer, war, accidents, and stroke. The Snapshot Study is an NIH-funded collaborative research project between MIT Effective Computing Group, and the Harvard Medical School's Brigham and Women's Hospital Division of Sleep and Circadian Disorders. Together, we study how daily behaviors and social connections influence sleep and health and outcomes such as mood, stress, and academic performance. We want to use what we learn to help build a system that automatically detects when an individual is becoming unhappy and help them before they become depressed. We have measured about 300 undergraduate students' health, behaviors, and other external factors like weather and location, and how they experience their own mood and well-being, using a wearable sensor, smartphone, and surveys. Each participant was monitored for 30 days, resulting in over 7,000 days of data. We found out that individuals with behavioral patterns connected with self-reported high stress to have more irregular sleep, are using their phones late at night, working long hours, and have negative social interactions. The self-reported calm participants in our study generally took breaks at noon and exercised in the evening. Through social network data we collected through calls, text messages, email, and surveys, we hope to find specific social patterns that distinguish between stressed and calm people, or good and poor sleepers. We aim to help predict how people feel and will feel in the future without them reporting anything. As this study continues, we are gaining better understanding about how to predict and improve a person's mood. Ultimately, we hope to prevent most depression from happening. That would make a happier future for people worldwide.
Give one example of the machine learning that my amazing group of students here has been doing lately. Just with all that data you heard about, take it for several weeks, and can we predict a college student's high-low stress, positive, negative physical health, and happy, sad mood, kind of simplifying the problem, tomorrow night based on the data through today. We set it up to be about a 50-50 chance of getting it right. And when we do that, I thought maybe we'd get 55, 65% accuracy using this new personalized machine learning with deep learning and multitasking. And we're already getting 82 to 87% accuracy on this. Now, this is just a one-day forecast, and it's a bit oversimplified. We're working on the much harder versions of it now, with the goal that in the future, we should be able to see not just when you're in trouble, so when your well-being dips way over here on the right over time, but back now, could we tell when outwardly everything still looks fine? Could we tell if you are on the path that is looking super vulnerable or the path that is going to be resilient when those major stressors hit? So that's our goal, is to detect that early, to learn that from massive amounts of data. And as George was saying, I completely agree, and Joey too, the prevention. Could we change this to do real healthcare, really helping prevent disease? What if 80% of the depression today, which as you heard is predicted to be the #1 disease burden by 2030, what if that is preventable and we don't change those numbers now? I think we might be able to change them with the kind of brain power that's in this room. So I hope you'll join us in that mission. Thank you very much. And here's where you can get some free articles with a lot more detail of all this work.